Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone on this call for today's discussion, which involves all of us on this subject of untangling religion and spirituality. I love this word, untangling. I think lots of things need untangling, but this is a big one. This is being translated. The Spanish translator maybe needs to toggle to Spanish because at the moment you're in English mode. So I don't know if you know the toggle. Yes, you're right now. Perfect. I think Portuguese translation is coming very soon. So this is exploration together. We really welcome your interaction in the chat. I've put my name as Sarah for chat messages. And welcome to come into camera. It just creates that feeling of connection. So it'd be lovely to see you as well. And I'll just share one or two sentences on this. I really appreciate the exploration because it's meaningful for every one of us. I myself wasn't brought up much in a religion, but of course the atmosphere is there. And our tendencies may be hidden, connected to our past habits. And I like this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." And I can really resonate with that. And coming to spirituality was as if a discovery of the self I didn't know existed. But as Mike has said, you can take a person out of a religion, but it's not easy to take the religion out of a person. So these habits may be there. And let's see where this conversation goes. And looking forward, we're going to be meeting Mike. And he's an author of 16 books currently, maybe more in the pipeline. And particularly like his emphasis on continuous unlearning. And this is that return, I guess, to this self before the conditioning. So the self-awareness and emotional freedom, which he brings together in his books, including Spiritual Intelligence. So it's going to be a really lovely chance to kind of go into some of these details. So warm welcome to Mike, and it'd be lovely to hear maybe an orientation to what is religion, what is spirituality, but however you want to begin. And good evening and warm welcome.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And very warm welcome to everyone who's decided to turn up for this particular conversation, which is destined to be very, very interesting on what really is a huge topic. And I don't know if we can keep it simple enough for everyone to participate, if not verbally, then intellectually. Maybe if I kick off with a few ideas first. I mean, this is the kind of territory that everyone has to explore really for themselves ultimately, because the words that we use really are insufficient to describe the territory, and it's something you need to do for yourself. And my favorite way of doing it is just on walks. And just when I walk, I find I'm able to emerge from the depth of my own being, a deeper understanding. But other people it may be in conversation with people, it may be writing, it may be art, and so on. But it's certainly a juxtaposition between two poles, which is worth clarifying. Remembering, of course, that ultimately, although they may sound opposite, and I may position them as opposite in words, they are not opposing each other. When I use the word religion, I'm really talking about what's called mainstream religion today in society. In other words, the institutions of religion. I'm going to try and describe those institutions without using their names. But I'm sure everyone can understand what I'm talking about. And you're right that when we're young, we are conditioned and programmed and taken to our institution our church, our mosque, or whatever, and thereby receive the information from which we create a set of beliefs. Information is the raw material for our own personal beliefs. Although we may believe that we received our beliefs from some large person, a parent, a teacher, or whatever, we really create our own version. And we use information that we receive from those people and from culture, society, etc., to create those beliefs. So when I talk about religion, I'm talking about those institutions on the outside, which are external to us in a sense, from which we receive that information. Whereas when I'm talking about spirituality, I'm really referring to those moments. I don't know if you ever had those moments when you were really happy, you were content in yourself for absolutely no reason. You weren't thinking about it, you were just content. You cared for someone or you cared for something, and you extended yourself as an expression of that care for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And so for me, that really kind of encapsulate the individual who is being spiritual and doing spiritual at the same time in such moments. And that's why I'm going to use one word quite a bit, and that is the word tendency, because it kind of gets me out of trouble in a sense. It's my get out clause, is the religious person tends to work from outside in, whereas the spiritual person tends to work from inside out. And that sounds like a great separation, but it's not really, because you could say everything we experience, everything we do comes from our own spiritual being, our own being of spiritual energy. You could say everything arises from that as an expression of that. And of course it is, but of course the quality and the intention is not included in that. So if there is the intention behind what we do to get something for ourselves, whether it's recognition or acceptance or approval or whatever, then we wouldn't call that spiritual. At least many of us wouldn't, but some would. They wouldn't be aware of their intention. They wouldn't be aware of their subtle desire. And they would just be thinking, well, I'm doing really good here, being unaware that I'm really wanting something in return. But they would name that action, and that state of being, spiritual. Whereas I would say, well, this is where spirituality is really, really deep. It comes from a deep place inside, which is totally free of any desire or intention to get anything for myself. That's quite a hard, it's quite a high bar to fix. Whereas the religious person tends to be active, especially when they're doing good, very often when they've been told to do good. They've learned to be caring. They've learned to be compassionate. They've learned to be empathetic. I'm not saying that's wrong or that's bad. That's fantastic if they have, but they're doing it because they've been told that that's their duty. That's what they should do. As opposed to that's what they are doing naturally. The religious person tends to build their sense of identity out of the institution from which they have received the information. Yeah, and this is why I whisper it quietly, but I might say that most religious people are not truly spiritual. Whereas the spiritual person builds their sense of identity, or they've had this realization of their identity in some form or other, through some practice or other, not from outside in, but it arises from inside out. So they've kind of realized that, well, some would say spirit is what I am, soul, spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I might say that the truly spiritual individual has the tendency to know for themselves that they are nobody. And when I say nobody, I kind of mean nothing really. And I kind of mean they know this intuitively, deep down, not because they've been told it, but because they've realized, you know, that any identity built out of what I'm not, which tends to be what the religious person does, they tend to build their identity out of their institution, their church, their mosque, or whatever institution is behind that. And then they say, and they use a label, they give themselves a label, and that tends to be their sense of who I am. Whereas the spiritual individual tends to have realized that that creates a false sense of self. And they've realized that because they realize that by creating a sense of identity that's not based on anything, that there then will be the experience of real freedom. In other words, when you build your sense of identity, as the religious person tends to do, out of their religious label, then there has to be this thing eventually called emotion. There has to be a disturbance whenever their religion is challenged. And they then take it personally, and they then disturb their own consciousness. They disturb themselves. And that's what emotion is. It's a disturbance in consciousness. Yeah, that's not easy for most people, because most people, they have the belief, again, something they've learned from outside in, from an external source, that emotion is necessary. It's everything's emotion. Love is an emotion, and anger is an emotion. And they've learned that all of these are all emotions, because they've not yet disentangled, you know, an authentic, natural feeling from an emotional state. Then they won't be able to recognize that they are disturbing themselves and how they are disturbing themselves. Yeah, and that's what the religious person tends to do. And that's why you have such conflict. The root cause of most wars and history have been people who have been attached to a belief system, whether you call it a religious belief system or a political belief system or whatever. But they've been attached to a belief system. And then when they've heard the beliefs of the other side, who they perceive to be the others, then they feel as if they are personally challenged. And so they become aggressive, which is the sign of the presence of the emotion of anger or irritation or frustration. This is what happens every day in politics, really. And so they go to war over that and say, I'm right, you're wrong. And so they start to become very emotional. And those are the signs to watch for within myself, which whenever I begin to generate or distort the energy of my consciousness into that emotional form, that means I'm moving away from my natural state of being as soul, spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, as who I truly am. We often read and hear. You have to discover who you are, who you truly are. And we go, yes, yes, of course, that's true, that's true. I must find out who I am, because everyone seems to be encouraging me. And then 10 minutes later, we're thinking, what on earth does that person, what do they mean? How can I know who I am apart from what I've been taught, apart from what I've learned from those big people when I was young? Tradition, culture, etc. And so it's quite challenging to realize the spirit that you are, consciousness, soul, psyche, whatever label you want to give it, which it has no identity, but yet still exists. I still exist. I have no identity, but I still exist. Now, that's not to say that I don't play with various identities. I don't play with the label Mike George. I don't play with the nationality that's stamped on my passport. I don't play with what I do. I play with these labels, but I don't identify with them. Yeah, and so this is the international language of labels. It's a language. It's a way of communicating with each other at a physical level. It's the base level of communication through a series of labels. I have a very good friend who once said, all we do in life is name things and move them around, which is quite a nice idea. You can reduce everything to that. We just give things labels and we move them around. That's all we do in life. But of course, the spiritual individual does much more, because they're curious, and eventually they cross the line where they realize that all these labels that we've learned to give to ourselves and to put on others, they have to go. Yeah, they are the cause, of emotional disturbance, conflict between people, of disharmony in the world, the disharmony we're seeing in these days. They are the cause of that. So maybe just finishing this introduction, I think that sometimes people ask me, what's the difference between religion and spirituality? And I would say that religion tends to say to you that here are the beliefs of this particular religion, and you must believe that or else. In other words, it's a set of information expressing a number of beliefs which you have to believe, and you have to articulate your beliefs towards others, or else you will be punished. And so you find in the religious context, people get very attached to such beliefs. And where there is attachment to a belief, which is an intangible, subtle thing, which exists only in consciousness, but there's still an attachment to it, there must be the emotion of fear, or tension, or anxiety, or worry. They're all faces of fear. The fear of these beliefs being wrong, the fear of not believing enough, the fear of not building these beliefs into my life enough, or the fear of being punished. So different levels of fear. Whereas the spiritual individual tends to have realized this happens when you become religious. And so what fear is the distortion of the energy we call love. Now love is simply a word we use for the highest vibration of consciousness, not the physical form, but consciousness. It's the highest vibration of consciousness is called love. But as soon as consciousness becomes attached to anything, and the most subtle thing is memory and belief, then it distorts the vibration, the natural vibration of consciousness, which is love. It distorts that into the vibration of fear. And so you have a drop down, if you like, if you want to illustrate it, and it's a dropping of the vibration. It's a distortion of the vibration. So fear is love distorted by attachment. And that attachment at the more subtle level, I mean, we are used to being taught to be attached to things and other people and places and so on. That generates a lot of fear. But the most subtle form of attachment is to beliefs, memories, subtle ideas, which are what beliefs are, basically. So the spiritual individual has realized that and is able to maintain a high vibration and act from that vibration, allow that vibration of consciousness to shape their actions and their responses and their vision of the other person. So I don't know if that's enough to start, to begin. If that raises more questions than it does answers, I'm not sure, but Sarah, what do you think?
I was just considering some students that come into the inner space here that are feeling very affiliated with a religion, but the story often goes that when they feel there's something missing, and learning meditation, learning a bit of a spiritual philosophy helps them appreciate and connect better to the essence of the religion by giving it that focus. Reframing maybe, because there's so much in each religion, there's a lot of expansion, and perhaps it's then a learning to be the true to the nature. So I was just observing that thought, but I really appreciate you've kind of kept it very clean, very separate, and that's necessary to sort of begin. And this important point about not being attached, and then we can honor our true nature. Any physical identity, we feel vulnerable. So I suppose there's some comments coming in. A friend who's a Muslim minister, he asked me all the time, I'll have to work out that question a bit more. What I would like to ask, to build on what you've said, the wish to honor the true self and come out of this physical temporary identity, the habit to identify as strong. And do you feel, in maybe your experience or your exposure to others on the spiritual journey, what do we need to look for? These subtle tendencies, for example, fitting in with an institution. One may have realized, and pretty much everyone on this call are probably some way on their spiritual journey, but the things which we need to just shine light on so we can honor this free spirit that you highlighted. I don't know if that's something you want to share a bit about.
Well, I think you have to be prepared for chaos. In other words, chaos is going to occur in your consciousness if you're prepared to look at these ideas within yourself. For example, everyone arrives with a religious mindset, in a sense. It's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not you shouldn't. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's a question of understanding. And the reason that they arrive with this mindset is because they've been taught, the majority of us have been taught, to be dependent on others. To be dependent on the institutions of state for the rights that the state gives us, to be dependent on our parents, to feed us and to clothe us. And so we come into this context with this incredible dependency. And one of those dependencies for many people is upon the ideas that they've been fed and conditioned with and that they've absorbed from their religious scriptures. No, I'm not saying that's wrong or that's bad. It's just a dependency. So one question that you can ask yourself is, can I live without this scripture? Can I live without these ideas? Can I live outside of the community that gathers around these beliefs, these scriptures? Can I be myself? Or do I have to have, do I need to proselytize? Do I need to be studying these ideas all the time? Yeah, and so so in one context would it might just be changing your clothes. You know, do I need to wear the frock and the gown? Do I need to put on the crown or whatever the religion specifies or has taught you to wear? Can I wear something of the opposite? And then, if so, how do I feel? Do I feel any different? And so there's going to be a little bit of chaos if you bring this dependency with you, and everybody does. Because the truth from me, and this is from me, is that when spirituality is lost, that's when religion takes its place. Yeah, so we all start off naturally free, naturally loving, naturally at peace in ourselves, naturally contented. We all start that way, and we have little windows, little tastes of that right now. Even in our life right now, we have little tastes of that. But gradually over time, and now I am talking about historical time, you know, that is lost, that naturalness is lost. And we then start looking outside, searching for something that will fill that loss, will replace that loss. And that's why when belief replaces truth, truth is not a thing. Truth is your true state of being, your trueness as a being of consciousness. Soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, don't give it any more labels than that, just consciousness. And so when you're truly in your trueness, then everything is natural. But that trueness gradually gets replaced, especially by other people who want to feed you lots of information and who have decided I'm right and I'm more right than you. And so here's the information you need, you should have, you must take this in. And so we, being quite young and quite innocent, we gradually absorb a lot of information. And so those beliefs replace our naturalness, our truth. Yeah, now those beliefs are not enough. They're not enough. They come with that feeling that person you referred to was expressing earlier on, that feeling there's something missing because belief is not the truth. And so when you hold on to a belief, you're missing, and there's a gap there of what is true, what is real, you know, what is truly natural. You're missing that. But you don't know you're missing it. You can't put your finger on it. It just feels as if something's missing. And so you, in order to realize what is true, to go back the other way, it's necessary to challenge, to notice and challenge all the beliefs you're living from. Yeah, and if you challenge the beliefs, if you come to be aware of the beliefs that you're living from, the things you learn from others, then eventually they'll drop away. You will realize that belief is not the truth. That belief is not true. That what that person's saying is not absolutely correct. It's not they're wrong. As far as they're concerned, they're right in their mind. But for me, that's not accurate. Not right or wrong. It's just not accurate. And so you gradually, very slowly, begin to rebuild, you know, your own true nature, your own true self, your own trueness, if you like. Probably the best word, your trueness. You begin to rebuild that. And the more you do, the more contented you feel, the more the signals come from inside out that you're on the right path, you're in the right way, you're doing the accurate, the right thing, and to restore that. And that's why this idea, nearly finished, of undevelopment, of unlearning, is kind of really what we're doing, is what the spiritual individual is doing, is that they're reclaiming the inner territory of their own trueness. But to do that, you have to undo everything you've been told. Not easy for many people.
No, but the clarity of I think it's about honesty with the self, and perhaps that's also a journey too, because the fear and wanting to fit in with others creates such an atmosphere that we are running from that. But even a few steps in that direction where we are paying more attention for the signals is, I think it starts the process, and perhaps we become more and more aware. A question has come: how should we explain to those from a religious background if they feel they do need more understanding of life themselves and the rules, if you like, of the society and culture that they've come from?
Well, it's a question of being a little bit sort of sensitive to that individual, first of all. You know, the old saying is feel their pulse, not their physical pulse, but just see if you can get an intuitive feeling for, you know, is this person ready to listen to what I have to say, or is it better to ask them questions to help them challenge their own belief system? Yeah, it's not a question of sorting people out or fixing people. You can't do that. That's not my job. All I can do is share my reflections, you know, the insights that I've come to, and I'm still on that journey. I'm still having those insights. All I can do is share that, but they may not be ready to or want to hear it. It might just be too challenging for them. So ask them lots of questions so that you're saying, I value what you have to say. I value, you know, your experience. I value your ideas when you're doing a lot of listening. And then allow them to open up, because this opens them up. And then they will ask you, you know, what do you think? And what's your take on this idea? And that's the moment when they're open, when they're ready to receive. Otherwise, you just might be pressing a button and you're getting resistance in return. They're going, yeah, they're looking at you. Yeah, oh yeah, I get it. But nothing's really going in. They're holding on to their so very often the best thing to do is to ask well before telling.
And the nice aspect you brought about, really, with that listening atmosphere, that you mean it as well. And within that, otherwise it's like one idea against another idea, and you stay at that level, which I'm also enjoying the building of this topic. Someone's asked, spirituality also has rules, set of rules, and beliefs. She's put beliefs. You might have a different word for that. How is that different from organized religion?
The rules of spirituality are contained within your consciousness. And if you continue down this path of inquiry, and especially self-inquiry, then you'll begin to stumble across what these rules are. You know, I prefer to call them laws. They're kind of laws. You know, you bring a set of laws to the world in your consciousness. It's just that you're not aware of them, because conditioning and programming have been so deeply embedded over time that it's very difficult to be aware of them. For example, the law of love is the idea that everyone is united. We're all one. Love is the unifying energy. Now, what does that really mean, though? That's the thing. And when I say unity, I don't mean, you know, the French are the same as the Germans, are the same as the British, and so on, because we've labeled to divide. In other words, you've been taught to label different people, and that's you being taught how to divide, how to create division outside and therefore within your consciousness. And this is such a deep, deep habit we have of creating and sustaining this division. And so that's why the law of love is quite challenging to realize, and even more challenging to enact, to bring through into your attitudes and your behaviors. And the law of love just simply states that this energy of love is a unifying energy. In other words, when you realize your natural state of being is this highest vibration called love, then your vision of other human beings is free of all labels. And you just hold everyone as one. You know? Now that vision begins with a little bit of effort, but ends as a natural ability to look at those around you, everyone, and see everything as one, connected, unified. And this is the law of love. Now that law exists within your consciousness, but it's up to you to realize and to bring that back into your awareness. Oh, goodness me, at every single moment of every single day. And that's what the spiritual individual is doing. They won't say, well, I'm being spiritual, or I'm doing spiritual work now, or this is my spiritual. They won't say anything like that. They will just quietly, invisibly be doing that in their consciousness, bringing that vibration back to its natural state.
Yeah, this the spiritual model that helps me is that this at the unlimited level, we are intimately connected. It's like yearning for a shared experience and for this unconditional love, but you just cannot get that if there is preferences, or and that this world, if we've created attachment, then we are not able to love, because we're feeling insecure, we feel we can lose. So this world is a great play, secondary reality, but the primary is this universal unifying experience. So spirituality is lifting us above these labels, and as you described, it gave this feeling as well, coming out of division. I mean, we probably can't talk about this subject without bringing in divinity. So what would you like to share on that? Do you think if someone has a concept of whatever you want to call that, God or Allah or Shiva, through religion, would you like to say a bit about that compared to spirituality, or what's important for you in this area?
Well, it requires that we don't really leave the topic of love, and not sure how far to go here, but love, true love, has no object. Love is what I am. It's not something I do. It is ultimately what I am. And when I realize myself as love, then I've restored my divinity. That state of consciousness will be divine-like, or in religious terms, God-like. It's a little bit similar to God, is that God is not an object. We're getting into quite deep territory, in as much that, well, let's use the metaphor of nature, of the natural world, the physical world around us, outside. So let's, as you have rightly reminded me, that's the secondary reality. The primary reality is within, is your own consciousness, your own thoughts, feelings, attitudes, memories, or whatever. All the intangible things that you create in your consciousness. As you raise your consciousness, you're moving closer and closer to the divine being that is sometimes called God, or remembered as God, or God is a word that is used to describe that highest, incredible, pure vibration. Now, the closer you get to that divine energy, that divine vibration, the closer you get, the more peaceful you will feel. It's like the closer you get to the sun, the hotter you will feel physically. But spiritually, the closer you get to that divine being, the cooler you will be. In other words, you will know a progressively deeper and deeper peace. Yeah? The closer you get, the higher you raise that vibration. And so in order to make that shift, if you like, to raise your vibration, to transform your energy, it's necessary to understand that your vibration is connected. It's all connected. It's all one. It's all, yeah. And God is not a separate being, ultimately. God is that energy, and you're moving towards it. So it's necessary to remember that's where you are going. You're not going anywhere physically, but you're moving your energy towards that. And the more you do, yeah, it's like physical sun. You can't, if you look in the physical sun, you'll be blinded. But if you look at the spiritual sun, that highest vibration, that pure energy, the clearer you will see. So you will begin to experience great clarity. Yeah. But to pull the vibration of your energy up there, it's necessary to stop doing many of the things you're doing down here, down in the physical world. It's not, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's necessary to stop being distracted by this, agitated by that, wanting something from them, hoping for something to happen over here. It's necessary to see all of that is kind of irrelevant, to raise your vibration, yeah, to move towards the sun, if I can use that metaphor, yeah. And then gradually you become one with that vibration, that energy. It's not a question of, well, some may differ here in spiritual language, but it's not a question of loving that one. It's a question of moving towards that one. And moving towards is loving in a sense, but it's not an object. It's like the sun in the sky, the physical sky, that's an object, but this is not an object. Yeah, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And you start to, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. It's not an object, and that same energy is my energy. That means that energy, and so this is why this walking and working it out for yourself is really necessary, to see this for yourself. Not just to see it, but to feel it, to know it for yourself. Yeah, and that's why religion tends to objectify a God, whereas spirituality doesn't objectify a source of spiritual energy, but says move towards, move up, raise your vibration, and you will be your natural self in the process. And eventually you will just merge with it. You'll become unaware that there is anything called separation. You and him, you and her, you and it. All of that will disappear eventually when you raise your vibration and you move into that energy, that light, if you want to call it that. Separation will disappear. Not sure if that kind of explains it a little bit more.
Yes, and I could feel the effort to be experiencing at least somewhat, because we are with these clunky things called words to describe what is essentially experiential.
Absolutely.
Thought came was the word yoga, mind connection with the personality of this divine being presence. but to be conscious in order to connect. It is not that I'm connecting from the premise of, in this case, Sarah, with all of the story around. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add. This is a big difference, isn't it, with religion, because it's, you put it objectifying, it's like separation, then you get into praise, and then you get into I'm not that, I'm not there, I'm not worthy dynamic. And so this equality, equanimity, resonance, it feels intuitively right that we should and can feel so full. Then we're not coming into the act from a space of emptiness. That's when things fall apart, of this subconscious anxiety begging for love from a human being. So yeah, that so another thing which I feel is could be different point is having a clear aim. I mean, what you described as an aim, would that be a differentiating part that's worth bringing in this discussion, that in a spiritual life there is a journey, there is a destination? Or anything you wanted to bring up there?
Yeah, I usually, my response to that is usually it's good to start with an aim, to begin with an aim, but be ready for it to change. If you're aware of your aim, you'd be ready for it to change, and then be ready for it to disappear altogether, to be unnecessary. You know, if you think about a goal for a minute, a goal and aim is kind of like the same thing in a sense, is that a goal is a finite creation. It's something you want to achieve, or somewhere you want to get to in a finite world, in a limited world, in a limited sense. And yet, deep down, you are an unlimited, infinite being. So you're creating a finite box for yourself, and you're also placing yourself in the future, not now. And so therefore you're limiting yourself. And so eventually, I'm not saying it's bad or it's wrong, it's okay, but eventually it becomes unnecessary. It becomes irrelevant, really. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky once again. This is good. Huh? This is very good. When you will realize that in truth, there is nowhere to go. Aims and goals are functions of this external physical world. It's like they're functions of language in a sense. It's good to have goals, good to have an aim. Yeah, and then you know where you're going, you go down the right road, you do the right things, you achieve your goal. But from a spiritual point of view, you're already there. You're always already there. Yeah, it's just not realized yet. And so again, a goal or an aim is it's okay, but it ultimately becomes a distraction from you realize, what am I doing if I want an aim and a goal, and it's very difficult not to externalize that. Then eventually it dissolves, it disappears, because you're already there. And that's why effortless effort, is totally invisible, totally incognito, is simply the effort to be totally present in the moment now. And if you can be fully present right now, without your attention going anywhere else, right now, then you will realize you're already there. You have always been here, not here, but here. You can't be anywhere else. But the illusion is because you believe you're your body, you create the illusion that you have to go somewhere. You have to do something. You have to be something. You have to achieve something. You have to have a goal. You have to have an aim. And here's the workshop, and here's the book, and here's the guru is going to encourage you to have all these things. No, from a spiritual point of view, you're already there, you're already here.
That's where the language of waking up is helpful to describe. So what the reality exists, but it's whether we are experiencing it. So maybe the process is to become clear about what is already there. But there is sometimes a process in that maybe it's becoming familiar with it again. And so it's like an identifying with it. I don't know if that word you would use it, but it's maybe a soft identification with the spiritual reality and individual, the separation from anything of the physical, that like a shift of consciousness. Within that is freedom. That's all I can say, the overwhelming word, because you're not trying to improve the role in this play anymore. Because I think that's one mixing, untangling we need, is so we're not trying to improve the temporary part and make that spiritual. It is what it is, and it doesn't really matter. So
everything is what it is, and nothing matters.
I used to find that difficult because in my old job, I used to really believe that, but it's not what I was paid for. I was paid to really care about these small things.
That's right. That's why it's challenging.
Yeah. But at least we get this, peace of mind, isn't it? That backdrop of everything is right, everything is good. We play the part, but from peace. There is a question that came on your walks. What question might you begin with? If you have a question, or how is it just a natural process when you're?
It is more of a natural process. I mean, there's something I'm thinking about or working on in terms of a book or an article or whatever. I might take that particular topic and sort of go into the depth of it and see what arises. So there's not a formula. It's some days it's nothing much really comes, and I just walk and just breathe, watch the clouds, watch the sky.
Right now we have the football going on in the background, and it made me think, for some that's quite a religion, isn't it, football? But also I wonder if in our culture in the West, science has become maybe a replacement for our beliefs, something that will improve our lives. It may be going slightly off topic, but it feels like when I was chatting with one language student, she's about 14, and I was just bringing the subject of climate change because it was sort of in the book, and pressing her a little, what is she feeling? And yes, she could sense the seriousness, but she said, but science will answer. Science will, and it felt like a religious sort of a savior energy.
Yeah.
I didn't have any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it is, science is a religion for many people, not for everyone, but for many people. But what you're watching and as your attention is going to different places in the world is a tremendous level of corruption of all these areas of our lives. When science started out, it was pure and had the right intention to explore and discover and to challenge and to test and to theorize, and it did all those things. But now it's been, for me, and from what I hear and read, and I'm as much in the world as anyone else, it's corrupted. But my perception of that corruption will be different from someone else's. From the, as you say, the person who considers science as a religion, or the person who considers science as the be-all and the end-all, and that's where the answers or the solutions to our problems are going to come from. I'm going to say, no, I don't probably think that's going to happen, because that corruption, according to how energy works, has to become worse and worse and worse. That takes us into the territory of entropy. And then to understand entropy is to understand how the energies around us and within us, how they become corrupted over time. They must do, it's inevitable. It's part of the game of life. And so that eventually leads to a crescendo, just like every symphony, every dance. There is a crescendo at the end. And that's when the corruption has infiltrated everything. In other words, everything's become distorted because every consciousness has become distorted. And so ultimately you have a climax to the symphony. And that's not a pretty destination from a physical point of view, but from a spiritual point of view, it's like inevitable, really. We're watching it right now.
Yeah, maybe one final question on this. It's very tangible, and connecting it back to, the mind and our identification, which leads to the insecurity. And this is the trajectory we're almost encouraged to work for the external. We're alienated from. It's not in the culture I was brought up in. I don't think I uttered the word spirituality. I don't know if I ever said it until I was 20. It's just not there, which is maybe okay. But someone said everyone is on a spiritual journey, but they don't realize it, since we're spirits. Do you think everyone will realize it, given the stage you mentioned?
What you're talking about is the absence of the use of the word spiritual. It is ultimately what the spiritual individual will do. They won't even think about, well, that was spiritual and that's not. It's just, it only becomes apparent because we've lost our ability to be our natural self. And that's why you have the emergence of what's called a spiritual path or a spiritual journey, which is really what you referred to earlier on as kind of waking up or realizing, but it's not them, it's me. So I need to, all I can do is wake me up, is me waking up. I can't wake up anyone else. I can just work on me. Now, when you've crossed that bridge and you've realized that it's just about me, then the work starts, the work begins. And everyone, I don't know, maybe everyone, I don't know, I really don't know. Many people will reach that point where they'll go, oh, it's not them, it's me, and I can be greater, I can be better, and so they will start their inner journey. Whether you call it spiritual or not, it doesn't really matter, but it's the journey of awakening from the illusions that we're taught, by marketing, by advertising, by politics, by science, all these illusions that we are fed by these supposed experts in our lives. We will start to challenge, and some will challenge it out of anger. Oh, how dare they teach me that? Some will challenge it out of curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. I used to think that, but now I can see. Now I see. Aha! Now I see the illusion that is being perpetrated society-wide and that I have succumbed to on my own journey. And that aha moment, that realization, is just a little bit more of the self-awakening to the reality of who they are. And so everyone's different. But whether everyone makes that inner journey, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, thank you for that. And what came up about taking responsibility is really empowering, because it takes it away from the blame game, parents or institutions, governments, because the more we grasp that this is a shift of consciousness that start with the self, it can be confrontational, but I think when there are we have the chance to connect with others on the journey. We get tools and tips to, you know, to help with that. An hour has gone really fast, so we've kind of come to time. If there's anything finally you want to share, then do feel free. And if you have 2-3 minutes to perhaps guide a few moments of reflection, would be great. But before we do that, I will just highlight that I'll share on the screen. There is actually a book written by Mike, and I think it was released possibly just before COVID or during. So I think if you found this interesting, it would be a way to further your own material and reflections on this. And I'll also just share that in 2 weeks we have something slightly different, Beauty and the Real Beast. Or maybe it will be a continuation of understanding this falsehood and what is the real enemy. We'll be joined by Eric Laresti from Montreal and Wendy Farrington from Rome, who are both experienced meditators. And so if we call that, bringing a label in now, becoming more aware of labels. We have just put a link in the chat, which, all being well, we will be uploading the recording from today in Cambridge Innerspace YouTube. So that's all for the announcements, but back to Mike, if there's something you'd like to share to round up, and any reflections. Or...
Well, just on one thing, when you were summing up yourself, was just the idea of CERN, you know, this very huge ring that they built underground. Some people say for nefarious purposes, but I kind of like it as a metaphor, because what they do is they smash atoms together, and then they watch what bounces off or comes apart, or they watch smaller atoms emerging. And so spirituality is a little bit like that. If you can find a bunch of people that you can interact with, you know, as you do this kind of inner work, which is challenging your own beliefs and the beliefs that you've learned, then it's a little bit like that, is that you bounce off people and you smash into people, and some people you have a harder time with, some people you have an easy time with. And so at every interaction you have, there's something to learn. There's something that's going to occur within you, not from the other, not about the other, but about yourself. There's something to learn. And that's why it's worth finding a bunch of people and being part of a community that is doing this inner work together.
That is so true. Benefit in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's good. So let's finish with a few moments of quietness. And it's just a nice way to tie a ribbon around the session. And if you just relax your body in the chair, so it doesn't distract you in any way, take your eyes away from the screen and just rest them on some object in front of you, or close your eyes if you want. And just bring all your awareness, all your attention to your breath. And just for a moment, just watch your breathing. Relax your breathing. Don't force, just start to watch. And you'll notice your body becomes even more relaxed. And yet, you are very aware. So now there are many thoughts. There's an awareness of many thoughts passing across the screen of your mind, as if they're moving through you. Now I just watch each thought moving through. I begin to feel more peaceful in my mind as I watch the screen of my mind. And those thoughts, they come and they go. And I create one thought. I am a being of peace. And that thought moves very slowly across the screen of my mind. And then I let it go. Let it dissolve into the background. I notice what remains. A deep feeling of being at peace. So now the mind is quiet. And I feel a deep stillness here at the heart of my being. Silent and still. Silent and still. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone for creating this time and for your sharing. And if you want to come in and give a wave, so nice. Come into camera. Lots of appreciation. Thanks. Good to see you all. You're connected to Letchworth as well as Colchester in America. Very nice. So thank you for sharing and inviting inquiry, which is what I really appreciate. It's not about giving the answers, but promoting thought and also sharing our experiences. So one comment I take away, I'm already here, I just need to realize it. So we'll meet again and we'll just share those details in the chat and on the screen, and look forward to connecting another time, except that's not in the now, so we have to come back with just whatever happens. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.